with us. If you want to just share up your screen so we make sure we can see it, and we'll kick off.
Right, thank you. Can you see my screen?
Absolutely can see it.
Right, welcome everybody to the Microsoft Excel MO-200 exam prep brought to you by Exam Cram. And what we're going to be seeing today is everything about how to prepare for this particular Excel exam. I'm Chintan Patel. I'm based in Johannesburg, South Africa, and my primary purposes when I'm going about doing training, all sorts of things, is preparing candidates for uh, the Microsoft Office exams in general, but specifically one of the most popular exams are the Microsoft Excel exams. And what we're going to just be seeing today in this exam prep or exam cram session is how do we prepare ourselves for such an exam. I'm going to be going through some questions that we may come across. And we may find that the Microsoft Excel exam is a pretty unique exam. As a matter of fact, that all the Microsoft Office exams in general are pretty much a unique experience compared to the other Microsoft technical certifications and other exams that we might have available. So I'm going to just very briefly talk about, why an exam for Excel. We generally learn a lot of Excel on the internet. We have so many resources available. YouTube, there's so many. Udemy.com, there's so many resources out there. Books as well, and you can just skill yourself up on this particular set of applications. But then the problem comes about is, well, how do we truly show competence in what we know in Excel? And whilst we may be attending all of these courses, we might be getting a lot of knowledge through all sorts of programs available through different websites. A lot of the times is that it's only showing that you are there. It's an attendance certificate you're getting at the end. How do you truly measure competency in what you have learnt from the internet regarding Microsoft Excel, or from a course you've attended, whether it was in person, whether it was during your schooling, whether it was through your university, through the job as a particular crash course that you had to get onto. You're just going to be getting a certificate that you were there, or that you actually went through the material, and that's it. There's no actual assessment that takes place. You might be doing some multiple choice questions here and there, but that's still not going to really tell you if you know your knowledge really well, because Excel is very practical. You have to be doing things in Excel quite a lot. A lot of scenarios where you have to apply Excel in your day-to-day work. And whilst we may have a lot of Microsoft exams out there and certifications that are already multiple choice, we may find that we're getting our hands pretty dirty with Microsoft Excel, with working with lots of data, creating all sorts of reports, doing all sorts of formulas. So we really need to be working in the application a lot. And so for that, a certification like Microsoft Excel will really prove that you know Excel very, very well. So you could be attentive, understand all the concepts. You could be the person to answer every theoretical question an instructor throws at you when you're inside a course. You might be able to learn a whole lot of new skills in the workplace. You're just jumping onto a lot of things, but you're not going to be getting any form of proof to show that you're actually good at Excel. You want to put something on LinkedIn, you want to put something on your resume, you want to really show what you know about Excel. LinkedIn's been pretty good lately, allowing you to do a lot of assessments, skill assessments to know what you have to do in Excel. However, on top of that, you want to also be able to go through something very well accredited and also have a very fancy certificate at the end to show that you know Excel very well. So Microsoft Excel and the MO-200 is offered by Microsoft as well as an organization called Certiport. So we may have heard of Pearson VUE, which is for all the technical exams. And then Certiport comes into the picture where we have a lot more end user type of courses, a lot of things for business professionals, and the Microsoft Office Specialist program is there for all of the Microsoft Office certifications. Now we're talking more about the process in booking for an exam or going through identifying what we need to know for this exam itself in terms of making sure we know what we're doing. It is a slightly different process when you're going to go book and prepare for a Microsoft technical certification or an exam, which you will see throughout some of my colleagues' sessions later as they outline some of the processes. And we are going to be also seeing a different set of questions that we might come across in such an exam. It's completely different to some of the Microsoft technical certifications available. So mine is specifically on the Excel exam. There's so many out there, right? And so we're just going to be focusing on MO-200. And when we talk about MO-200, you know, what is this particular exam really all about is it is the entry level certification inside Microsoft Excel. On the screen, it just shows a screenshot from the Certiport objective domain that is the skills that will be measured when you are taking this particular exam. And we are just looking at some of the keywords there highlighted, managing your worksheets. So if I were to just go here, managing worksheets and workbooks, we are creating cells and ranges, creating tables, using formulas, functions, and then rounding it up with charts and objects. And so it's pretty much an overview of working with all sorts of various tools to make really good looking reports or organizing your data better, calculating certain things. And then beyond this, we have the Excel expert, which goes into much more detailed, much more complicated concepts for Excel. I'm here to prepare you for this entry level because this is a great starting point. We might not know how much we actually know in Excel. So this really covers your basic to probably intermediate levels of Excel, and then more advanced, much more technical aspects in the expert course that is available. And it is recommended that you do have some level of experience when approaching an Excel exam. If you are looking at Excel for the very first time or you have not had much experience, it's recommended, as I mentioned, that at least 150 hours with the product, then you should be able to do this particular exam quite comfortably. And it has, there is a little note here at the bottom, is that it uses a performance-based format testing a candidate's knowledge, skills, and ability using the Office 365 and Office 2019 program. So this version of Excel that we would come across in the MO-200 will be based on the Office 365 version, now known as Microsoft 365, as well as the Excel 2019 perpetually licensed version of Microsoft Excel. So if you are familiar with those particular versions, then you will see a lot of content from that particular those particular set of versions where we have questions being asked from there. Anything older, there are older exams available, but they are slowly being retired. because we do want to make sure we are up to date with the latest version available. We want to be able to tackle anything that is presented to us. And in fact, whilst this is just a little bit out of scope with this current topic I'm teaching, the brand new version that just came out very recently, that was actually a month ago from today, was the Excel 2021 exam. And whilst I was contemplating to do the Excel 2021 exam prep, unfortunately, there was just not enough content available and not enough information available at the time for me to consider doing a 2021 exam prep. So that's why I rather opted to do this one here, because it is the most recent one that we have available for us to go through. And so whilst I've given you an overview of what you might actually need to know, we do have a wonderful set of objective domains that is available to us, telling us exactly what we need to know. Just like other technical certifications out there across multiple vendors, Microsoft included, we always get told what we need to study, so then we know exactly what to apply for in the exam itself. And so if you are familiar with all of these objective domains going across multiple categories over here, then you will be comfortable with this particular Excel exam. You will be able to answer all the questions presented to you when you are taking this exam over here. You do not need to know anything more than this. Obviously, nothing less than this. You want to try and focus on exactly what you see here. And what I'll probably do in the chat is also place where you can actually look at these exam objectives yourself when you actually want to familiarize yourself with this. So in the chat, I've placed the objective domain that I have on the screen. It might not look exactly the same. This comes from Certiport. The Certiport one is very much the same as the one that I've just posted in the chat from Microsoft. So when you do navigate to that particular link, you will scroll down and then you will download the exam skills outline. The exam skills outline will pretty much show you exactly the same content that I have on the screen over here. So I cannot emphasize this enough. I cannot stress enough that you really want to be looking at this before any form of exam prep, before any form of attempting the exam itself, just to make sure you've covered everything that is listed in these objective domains. And whilst I'm not going to be going through every single aspect, as this is an exam cram session, this would require a couple of hours for us to go through in great detail. What I am going to be covering, though, is how do we cover some of the specific types of questions that we may come across, and how do we really prepare ourselves for such an exam. You might be already seeing out there from the Microsoft technical certifications available that there are a lot of preparation materials available through a variety of sites. There's YouTube as well. There's also official courseware available if you attend a course, whether virtual or in person. I will be talking about for Microsoft Excel as well, what is available. We have a different set of providers. We have different resources that we can attempt to use to prepare for the exam. And I am going to be going through a couple of slides just to go through what the exam really consists of before I actually go into what sort of questions we might actually encounter. But just to show, what are some of the main things that we might have a look at or want to really be focusing on in the exam. And that's something that I when I shared the link that I shared in the chat will tell you in great detail. In parentheses, it will show that how much of the exam will you see a certain topic. So when I click on the link that I shared with you and you open up the skills outline, it will tell you that manage worksheets and workbooks consists of 10 to 15% of the exam. Then manage data cells and ranges would be 20 to 25%. Manage tables and table data, 15 to 20%. Performing operations by using formula and functions, 20 to 25%, and managing charts, 20 to 25%. So you'll find that Microsoft really wants you to know more formulas and functions. There's a variety of them provided. We have some of your summary calculations you have to do, some of your conditional operations, looking at text functions that you need to know really well. And then when you're managing your charts, everything to do with standard charts. We're not looking at fancy things like pivot tables and pivot charts in this exam. That's only in the next exam. So if you have to put in a very standard chart, that's what you're going to be tested on quite a bit. And then a lot of the rest of the exam is more on preparing your data. So we talk about importing of data. We are managing the structure of the workbook, structure of the worksheet. We are customizing a lot of Excel options and settings, and we're using a variety of commands, looking at printing settings, looking at manipulation of data, using copying and paste capabilities, formatting, using the define named ranges as well, and looking at sorting and filtering. Right? So it's pretty much an overview of what some of Excel's greatest capabilities are, then moving on to much more complex capabilities, more on the data analysis side of things when we look at something like the Excel expert exam. But what is the exam then really going to consist of? How do I really make sure that whatever I'm preparing for will actually be tested, or how will I be tested? Because from the technical certifications point of view, when you see the other exam cram sessions presented, you are going to be coming across maybe multiple choice questions, scenario-based questions where you have to still answer multiple choice, match the columns, true or false. You'll actually see in some of the sessions that are presented by my colleagues, they will go through some of the question types. But we'll find something very much different when we are looking at a Microsoft Office Specialist exam. You are going to be seeing completely practical exam questions presented. You will be presented with a live Excel window in front of you, and you physically have to do things with Excel. So you will have a replica in front of you. It won't be your own Excel environment. It will be presented in a browser window, and you will be required to physically go through commands, through all sorts of menu options, inserting things, configuring things in that Excel environment. So you'll have about 30 to 50 questions categorized into, say, 5 or 6 projects, right? So you'll see project 1 will consist a certain amount of questions, which are independent to project 2, independent to project 3, etc. So you'll see different types of projects with different sets of questions, and these questions will all be asking you to do something. It will present a scenario, somebody's trying to achieve something in Excel, and it will then ask you to perform several actions in order to successfully complete that particular scenario or that particular problem that the customer is facing. So you really need to know where all of the Excel commands are. You need to pretty much know back to front. You need to know where the menu tabs are. You need to know where all the commands are, the right-click contextual menus, everything under the File tab, for example, because you only have 50 minutes, right? There's only 50 minutes for the Excel exam. It's very little time, actually. You have 30 to 50 questions and you have 50 minutes, so you pretty much have a minute per question that you have to, a minute per, say, yeah, a minute per question or so that you have to really know and get through, right? You have to know your product really well. If you don't know, then obviously you can always go back to it, right? And so one of the tips that I would normally give is just don't really sit on a question. If you really don't know where it is, do the things that you know first and then come back to it afterwards. And a lot of these exams that you would come across doing is you can always mark something for review and then go back to it later. And the same thing applies over here. You can just check the box, mark for review, and then come back when you are presented with your summary screen of what you have completed and what you have not completed, right? So you really want to know your program well. And then with most of the exams out there, you do have a pass mark of 700 possible points out of 1,000. So 70% or so is a minimum that you have to get in order to pass this particular exam. And I just put also a little note there, just further emphasizing that the exams are performance-based, right, and are live in the application. So live in the application is this concept where you will be presented with a live Excel environment for you to do things. And because it's presented in a browser environment, you pretty much have to know, as I said, all the different ways of doing something. You might actually be presented with an environment where some of your favorite ways of doing things will be disabled. So you might have to know the alternative way of doing something. So your keyboard shortcuts are a must. You don't have to go through every single keyboard shortcut in existence, but some of the common ones that you would probably want to go through just so that you can speed up the time that you're taking to do the actual exam. And some of the common ones, yeah, that are available. Some of the right-click menus that you might be used to seeing might be disabled. So you have to know how to go through the menu tab and clicking on a certain button to achieve something. And what normally gets to a lot of people when they're approaching a Microsoft Office Specialist exam is when the question is asked. The wording in the question, the diction, the grammar, that's something that normally throws a lot of people off, especially for those countries where English is not really a first language. And so that's also a common problem that one encounters. If you're not in a place where you're constantly talking in English. And whilst there are other languages available, right, you may be required to do the exam in English, maybe because it's required for a job that you're applying for or to validate certain skills for something you're working in. And so it's a good idea to brush up some of the terminology that's used in the Excel environment because there's very specific terms used that you will be presented in the exam and you really need to know what they're saying. Otherwise, you will fall short of time, and then it becomes a problem where you're not competent enough for, say, in terms of understanding the language compared to the actual content itself. You might know how to do something, but when it's asked in a certain way, then that might throw you off. And as an instructor for Microsoft Office Specialist, as well as someone preparing someone for these people for the exams, I'm also an exam proctor for Certiport. So I proctor Microsoft Office Specialist exams as well in my region. And so I do look at people when they're doing the exams is that they're spending way too much time on a question. Some of them, they give me feedback afterwards that, yeah, they didn't really understand what the question was asking them to do. And it's mostly from those candidates where English might not be the best language they know, or they just don't know it enough. And it's for the purpose of the exam that you would need to use the terminology and know the terminology. Whether you use the terminology actually in practice is a different thing. We won't know that. But for the purpose of the exam and how I would probably say, in my opinion, for a lot of the vendors is when you're doing the exam, you need to know the exam as per the vendor's requirements. And when you do pass the exam afterwards, whether or not you actually use the terms provided by the vendor, that's a different thing. We don't know that. All right. So you do want to make sure you're very much familiar with what the question is asking you to do. And I'm going to be going through in our practical session in a moment. I'm going to be showing a screen as to an Excel environment. It's an example I've created myself. And I'm going to be going through some questions and explaining what we may have to do in a certain scenario when it's asked like this. And in all the different ways, they may ask you to actually do something. Right, so just a couple of more slides before we get onto the practical session is what would our certificate look like at the end? So this is just the Excel Associate certificate. This is my certificate, and so when you do pass your exam, you get a fancy one that comes through in PDF format. You can then also are able to share the digital badge that is available through Credly, right? So we see this quite a lot with some of the other vendors available, and so Microsoft Office Specialist is also something included in this, and that you want to really show the world that you are accredited in Microsoft Office, through the Microsoft Office Specialist program. Specifically Microsoft Excel over here. And so this digital badge is verifiable anywhere. You can share it on LinkedIn. They give you a URL. You can download the badge itself, put it on a PowerPoint slide. You can share it all over the place. And you have every right to do so once you have passed the exam itself, right? So this is something you really want to share all over. If somebody asks for proof that you have done the certification, you might want to share the actual certificate, but this is also good enough because one can also verify the badge in real time by clicking on the link presented, and it can then show whether the certification is still valid or not, whether it's still active as well. Right. And if you do want to then go beyond looking at other applications, and once again, this is not focused on other applications, but there are certain pathways that are available when we want to go further with some of the other Office applications that are out there. You could become an associate, you could become an expert, and it shows you the different pathways that are available. And I'll share the link to this a little bit later, maybe if we have some questions and that we would like to get answered. I'll share the relevant links where we can look at more information about this as to if you want to be approaching some of these other exams. And what I just want to really mention, just to remind ourselves, that we are in this particular session, that I did mention at the beginning that Microsoft Excel is a certification you do want to get. Why do you want to get the certification? It is the leading IT productivity certification in the world right now for productivity software. In my view, going through a number of different vendors, you won't find something as rigorous as the Microsoft Office Specialist. There are others out there, and I do appreciate some that are really out there that are working, that can assist, but the Microsoft Office Specialist is the one to go for because it is the only official Microsoft Office certification that's recognized by Microsoft themselves. Right? So you do want to have great accreditation, great quality, to show the world that you know Microsoft Office, and if it's there endorsed by Microsoft themselves, then why not? And it is something that's taken across the world. More than 1 million MOS exams are taken every year across 140 countries. There's about 26 languages or so that it's available in. You can take the exam virtually, you can take the exam in person. I run a testing center myself for Microsoft Office specialist exams and other Certiport exams. And so I'm always frequently on the road doing exams online. I did some today as well, right? So it's very much available and accessible in a lot of places across many different countries. And when I finished with the practical component of this session, I'll just talk more about how do we go about preparing more for the exam, as well as what are the other things I need to know about working with Certiport compared to something like Pearson VUE. So I'm going to briefly just end my presentation here, and I'm just going to go through some of the questions I see in the chat before I move on. I see that I think you can share more test questions and solutions later. Links, format can gloss the questions, solutions can't really be shared. That would be a breach of general integrity of doing the actual exam. And then sample questions. Yeah, so these are just sample questions. I'm not actually going to go through exam questions as such. Obviously, I would not be allowed to do that, but just going through generally what you need to know. I'm not going to be reading out an exam question. All right, that's definitely not something I can do, and I'm being recorded for this, obviously, so it can be used against me if I do something that goes against code of conduct. So yeah, be rest assured I'm not going to be doing anything that goes through any form of agreement. Right, so I'm going to just briefly end my sharing here and just switch to an Excel environment that I have in front of me here, right? And again, this is something that I've just created myself. There's some dummy data out there that one can get and practice on. You can practice on your own work that you may have. You can go through a course, etc. Right. So I'm just going to be going through, as part of this exam cram session, again, some very key components that we want to be focusing on when approaching this, right? And so when we are presented data in front of us here, we might be asked to create something called a table, right? And a table is mainly a reporting tool that we would have to come across and go through when working with Excel, and just to identify where is this table tool. When we click anywhere in the data, we have insert and then table, and then we insert this table on top of the existing data. And the table is a very common tool to do some very quick summary calculations. It incorporates a lot of some of the elements that we have when preparing the data, when working through it. So that's something that gets something you want to just know really well. Also, that you want to apply certain formatting to this. So you're going to just apply certain colors. You want to know how to really name this table over here. So I'm just going to give it a bit of a name at the top to easily identify it. And then why the table is used quite a lot is you want to insert this total row. So then you can very quickly get some calculations done. So you want to display the total number of products here. You can very quickly change this aggregation over here from sum to count to max to minimum, right? So something that's very easily available. That's why the table tool is used quite a lot to get these summary statistics very, very quickly. You also want to, when you are looking at then printing this. So you've done your report, you want to now print this particular report over here. You want to make sure that headers like this are configured to appear on every single page. So you want to look at print title setting under the page layout to just identify how to repeat rows at the top of each page. So one would go and repeat these rows here. So then every time I print out this particular worksheet, then I'll get these headers appearing on every single printed page. So then when I'm looking at the data on multiple pages, I don't get lost when I'm looking at some tabular data like this. Some simple other formatting capabilities, just making sure that we want to make things neat and tidy in terms of the headings. We want to merge these cells that are present for the heading, so I can select my data. I would want to maybe merge across, so then I have the cells merged so they appear as one. So then I can work with that text inside, make it bigger, make it smaller, and it wouldn't affect any other cells. You want to then probably go through exporting this particular document as a PDF, go through creating a PDF, going through exporting in multiple file formats. You have to then go put it somewhere else. You have to import it later somewhere else. So you want to just know all the different ways on making something a CSV file, making it a text file. One of the common words we'll see there is a delimiter. And what is a delimiter? It is a separating symbol that we would go through and use when defining what type of file we want to use when we are exporting, right? So PDF would be something static. The delimited file would be something that is a universal file format that can be accepted by multiple types of applications. So that's something you want to just be familiar with. And then obviously going through some of the printing settings that are available, printing to a PDF, and then going through some of these settings on how to optimize printing, how to make sure that we are saving paper, we are economical about it, we're making legibility easy over here when printing, right? So we don't see things cutting off. It's taking 24 pages now, so I might want to put this in landscape. I want to maybe fit all the columns on one page, allow the rows to overflow. Remember that I can also go to rows to repeat at top. So if I just take a step back, I'm going to configure these rows here to be repeated at the top, right? So then when I'm about to print this, right? So when I go File and Print, right, then at least I can see all of my headings as I'm going down. So this is something where we are optimizing for easy legibility. All right, so whilst it might still take up 25 pages, right, we can't really fit everything on one page, right? That's not really ideal, and it won't really fit on one page. The text will be really tiny, and there will be a limit to at some point when the text will no longer fit, right? So this is probably the best way, the optimal way to put something on, and that's what something like the Excel exam would want to test you, and you might be presented a scenario like that someone's looking for an easy way to have something printed. What are some of the ways we would need to know to go through when preparing for a situation like this? Right, so that's just something that we can talk about there. In the 2019 monthly sales worksheet, we can do some formulas that we might have to come across doing some formulas here. And in the performance data, we have to do a chart, right? So there's just a couple of other worksheets we're going to go through, but just to end off over here, we might also be required to do a lot of sorting, a lot of filtering, preparing ourselves for the data analysis journey. The certification talks about making use of Excel for all sorts of data preparation, using the functions to answer certain questions, looking at making all sorts of reports. And the table report is still, as I said earlier, one of the most common ways to start off with reporting. So whilst we may have looked at some of the ways to set up the report, we can go further by, say, adding a total sales column. And when we do add a total sales column, the column becomes part of the data and inherits all the formatting. And we might have to do a calculation to get total sales. I can use this equals, and I can simply click on the cells and start using names of columns when doing the calculation, getting myself away from using cell references like E9 times F9. I can just simply click on the cell itself, and it uses something called defined names. We might have to know defined names quite a bit because it's a key way to get away from using standard cell references to do formulas and using something that we are more familiar with, words that we are more familiar with compared to alphabet, letter, row number, alphabet, letter, row number. So here I've done a calculation and I pushed enter. It would possibly complete it for all the cells going down, right? So that's sometimes it can happen automatically, sometimes it doesn't. You might have to double click at the bottom right hand corner for it to complete all the way down, right? And it's a very quick way to get all our calculations done by simply selecting the cells we would like to use, and it will then auto complete it for you all the way down. Your sorting and filtering capabilities, some of the things we are doing as we are working through analysis, sorting the data to make it easier to read. So going through my data tab, the sort button, sorting by manufacturer, adding another level, then by product name, so doing a sort on top of a sort, changing the order a bit here and there, right? So then we can really get down to understanding how each of the manufacturers did in this particular table here. Maybe I want to go further and see all the different products that I can then filter by that contains the word Bluetooth. I can then just search for all the products that contain the word Bluetooth in this. So that tests our knowledge whether we are able to find specific data and report back on that. We might be presented with a scenario like that a customer is trying to understand how did certain sales do for a certain product range or for something very specific, and how would you get there? So in the exam, they won't tell you how to actually what you need to do exactly to get there. They will just ask you very generally, like the customer's trying to achieve this, use a method or use a technique to present this particular solution to the problem that is being specified. Right, you're not going to be told, okay, using the sort and filter tool, go and filter all of the data that shows Bluetooth. Right, they would probably tell you the last part, show all products with Bluetooth, but you have to know how to do that. Right, you have to know that you'd have to use a filter button to actually get all the Bluetooth products, right? And you can't use something that is not tested in the exam objective. So if you know Excel really well and you would know that you could very easily insert something like a pivot table and get the answer there, you would get a question like that wrong, because first of all, pivot tables are not in this exam, and you would then be told to use something more simpler than a pivot table. So this is a simple means that just getting your filter and using text filter to show something according to a criteria, that's something you want to be focusing on quite a bit, right? Then looking at formulas, right? Just moving on to formulas. We started off with a very simple formula, right? But maybe I want to insert a column here, right? So I'm going to insert a column called overachiever. And in some of our exam objectives that I shared earlier, we do want to know some logical functions like the if function. The if function is a very common function used to answer close-ended questions. So we might want to, in this particular table, have a look at all of the products that performed really, really well in terms of total sales. So maybe I want to just clear this filter, and maybe I have a criteria to meet that if the sales amount is say larger than $1 million, then display the word yes. If not, then display the word no. So we could start off by saying equals if, looking at this total sales here, must be bigger than 1 million. And then if it is bigger, then display yes, else display no. Right, so you will be required to know how to write a formula or a function. You won't be presented the opportunity to use the help capabilities. Those will be disabled. You can't use the internet, obviously, to go and find out. So you must know how the function works. You must know the syntax of the function. So you won't necessarily see this white box that's floating underneath, right? They'll actually remove that. So you'll need to know step by step inside the set of parentheses what goes there, right? So for the function to work correctly, right? And so when we do this, and then I just complete it for the rest of them, right? Then the answers will be displayed. So that's something we want to be familiar with when we are looking at something like the logical functions, right? What we would be expected to do. We will be expected to use functions tested in the or provided for in the objective domain, right? You might want to type formulas. You may also want to use the formula assistant tool here that we have here. If you want to insert functions using this particular capability, you may do so, right? You're not, you won't be, say, blocked from using this method, and you have to know how to type out the function inside the cell, right? You will be able to do it in any way that you're comfortable with, right? But you just won't get help or have help available if you get stuck with it. You know, you need to know how the function works, and you need to know how to actually build it with any data that is presented to you. Right, so that's just one of the things with functions. Another function that we might have to do using some of the summary calculations. So the summary calculations are found under your auto sum, so the auto sum capabilities, or manually typing out a function in a cell, right? But what is a very popular technique of actually getting questions answered using something other than cell references. So you want to probably reference the column of data compared to the cell references. So we have D4 here all the way down to D580. I don't want to use equals sum D4 to D580. I want to rather give this particular column a meaningful name. So I want to say equals sum of January, right, inside the set of brackets. So then I'm able to very easily relate to the data afterwards. So I would go through the process of defining my columns here using the define name capabilities under the formulas tab over here. So if I want to select all my columns, I want to define all my months over here, I'm just going to present the keyboard on the screen, because then I can go through that. I want to multi-select, use keyboard shortcuts to save you time. Instead of clicking and dragging, it'll be a browser window. You might have slow internet connectivity. You have to click and drag. So use your keyboard shortcuts if you know them. So if I want to select all of my column headings across and down, I can select cell D3. I can do Control, Shift, and the right arrow to go across, and then Control, Shift, and the down arrow to go all the way down. And then when I'm done, I can go to the formulas tab, go to create from selection, create names from values in the top row, push OK. I can have a look here that all of my names have been created here that I can use, double check one of them, that January is now available. And then so I can insert a function here for total sales for January. I can say equals sum, open brackets, I can type out January, right, instead of D4 to D580. And when I do that particular calculation, I probably type in an extra bracket and it gives me an answer. And you probably just want to format this as a financial figure so it looks like a financial figure at the end. Right, so very quick and easy to put in some of these names and then use the actual name itself inside the function rather than those cell references D4 to D580, for example. And when we're working with very large data like this, when we're doing analysis of it, we want to find an easy way to work through such data. In the previous worksheet, we looked at how do we optimize this for printing. If we're not printing, if we're going to be using this very regularly electronically, how do we make sure we are setting up this worksheet that we can use it electronically very, very frequently? So what I'm referring to is when I'm scrolling down, when I scroll across, I really want to make sure that I know which headings I'm referring to all the time. I'm sitting here somewhere in the middle. I've lost track what columns I've looked at and rows I was looking at. So you probably want to freeze your panes, right? You freeze panes that you would use over here, say at cell D4. So all of my headings are frozen, all my columns are frozen. Selecting D4, I can go to the View tab, freeze panes, and freeze panes again. So when I scroll down, my headings are frozen. When I scroll across, my products are frozen. Right, so something that we want to set up our worksheet for optimizing electronic viewing to make it easier for me to see my worksheet as I'm working on it on the computer quite regularly. And then another function we probably just want to familiarize ourselves with is I'm going to unfreeze my panes, go back to my original data, is some of the text functions that are available. So I want to join, say, these two values together. I'm going to insert a new column here. I'm going to call this product P and then manufacturer. And I want to join these two particular cells together. We want to be familiar with the text function that is most widely available in the Excel 2019 version of the exam. So you will get joining functions like concatenate and concat available, but in the newer versions of the exam, you would be expected to know how to use the brand new text join. Right, so text join is the replacement for concatenate, and so for such an exam, you want to know how to use this function because then it tests your knowledge on the latest functions that are available in a certain version. So I would use this delimiter space dash space, right? And then I'm going to ignore any empty cells in between. I'm going to select my two cells. And what is really nice about the text join is that it allows you to select a range of cells. I can do a click and drag and select two or more cells together instead of separating them one by one. And when I do this, right, I get my answer, and then I complete it for all the values going down. Right, so something like text join, something that's exclusively available in the Excel 2019 and Excel 365 version. That's something you want to focus on, and that objective domain will tell you exactly on the functions you need to be working with. Right, so this is a very common issue I've been seeing when I'm doing exam prep, and people will know that to join, let's use concatenate, but let's use the one that is most applicable to the version. So you need to know the newer version that is now available compared to something as the older one. We will never know, as with all exams, we will never know if we got something right or wrong. We don't get told that with every Microsoft exam. And the same goes for the Microsoft Office Specialist, that we may be doing all of these particular questions, but we'll get told at the end in a certain objective domain, managing worksheets or doing formulas, how well did you do here, how well did you do there, etc. Right, and excuse me, and then the last one that I just like to talk about is charting capabilities. Now, Excel's known for all our great charting capabilities available under the Insert tab. So we want to know how to really put in a fantastic looking charts on some of the data presented. You always want to click anywhere in your data, use this recommended charts button so that Excel tells you the best looking chart to use for your data instead of wasting time to figure out what we would like to put in. You want to probably select a certain chart, get it inserted, place it somewhere, resize it, right? So, and making it look presentable, putting in a certain title for this particular chart. So first quarter performance, right? Having a look at some of the capabilities available under chart design. I might want to swap the axes around so I can see the data from another perspective. I want to insert more chart elements, so I'm going to tick the box under chart elements here to insert sales on the left here, and then maybe months at the bottom, right? And then one of the common questions we might be asked, which you want to be familiar with, because it's not something that we would normally do unless it is part of legal requirements, is to add in alternative text. And alternative text is the text that we would normally insert for anyone with accessibility issues. When someone who is visually impaired, one who that wants to interact with an Excel spreadsheet, how would they actually go about looking at the spreadsheet, just like how other able-bodied persons would be able to do so. So I could then right-click on this particular chart here. I can view alt text. I can add in alternative text, something like chart display sales rep performance for the first quarter. Right, so this alt text, it tells you here at the top here, how would you describe this object and its context to someone who is blind or low vision, and tells you what you need to do. So this is quite a component of the exam, and you'll find this in every Microsoft Office exam, that adding in alt text, right, alternative text, because we want to be as inclusive as possible. We want to make sure everybody can work with Excel. So how do we set up the worksheet to make it much more inclusive? Right, and then just ending off with some designs here, maybe applying a certain style, and then moving this particular chart to a brand new worksheet on its own. And I'm going to just call this first quarter performance, right? And that's where I end off with my chart. Right. So from this practical activity that I just went through, this is the sort of things you would be required to do. Right. I haven't covered what exactly you will be asked, or the wording. Right. You will just be told to do this and do that, and you will be required to think of using a variety of tools based on the scenario that is presented to you. Right, and then just to end off on that particular note, on where can you then practice looking at some material that you could possibly use to prepare yourself for such an exam. I've just indicated some resources on the screen. The Microsoft Press Store, there are some great exam reference books available for all of the Microsoft Office specialist exams. Do go and have a look at that. There's also a lot of resources of LinkedIn Learning. Obviously, you can go for instructor-led training offered by your training company in your country. You can do it somewhere online as well. Just one thing to point out, that Microsoft official courseware is not available for Microsoft Office Specialist. So you will be, you'll probably, if you go for a course for Microsoft Office and for Office Specialist, you will find that there are certain providers of courseware out there that are available, but it's not something that is a authorized by Microsoft, or it's not authored by Microsoft themselves. It would be another organization that's making content available for the actual Office Specialist suite of exams, and that's actually what I've mentioned at the area at the bottom. That there are companies like Gmetrics, LearnKey, Jasper Active, Brain Buffet. These are organizations available across the world where you can actually get in touch with them to get hold of official practice material, looking at study material, practice questions. Yeah, there's all sorts of resources that are available from these particular service providers. Also contact your nearest Certiport solutions provider for more information. And just to identify who would be your closest Certiport solutions provider is what I'll do in the chat is I'm just going to place a link on where you can find your closest solutions provider. Solutions provider is your Certiport office in the country that is available. All right, so approach your nearest one. You can also approach me that if you want some more information on this, because I operate this in my own region, but I can also provide assistance to everybody else across the board and get you in touch with your nearest Certiport solutions provider. And then hopefully you consider continuing your journey and getting every other Microsoft Office Specialist certification in existence. And so my last slide just talks about showing all of my different badges that I got or have attained through the Microsoft Office Specialist certifications. The latest one that's available is here at the bottom here, the Excel Associate. That's a brand new badge that's available on the 2021 version. But all of these here, if that's something you want to pursue, it really adds a lot of value, right? It may not be broadcasted very well, right? But eventually, at some point, you may be asked to provide this proof. And what is this proof? It's the Microsoft Office Specialist certification, specifically in Excel. You get that PDF certificate, you get the badge. Yeah, so that's what is available from the Excel side of things. MO-200 is what it's covering. And just to wrap up then the Certiport journey, what would you do to start signing up for your exam is you want to probably visit certiport.com, right, just to go find out your nearest solutions provider. You want to get in touch with them, identify where's your closest testing center, because it's not the same booking process as you would do a Microsoft technical exam. There's a self-service process available for all Microsoft technical exams, but for Certiport, it's not really quite self-service. You'd have to actually get in touch with your office. You'd have to email them, give them a call, set up something. There'll be different processes involved, right? And you can choose to go into a testing center in person. You might do it online. You might even have someone come to you. I'm that example in my region where I would go to the client with certain exam laptops and they would write on my exam laptop, right? So that's also an option that I offer in my region, but it might be different in other regions. In other regions, you might just be able to do it online. You might have physical testing centers as well. And it's not necessarily the case where there's a Pearson VUE testing center that there will be a Certiport. It's not always the case. I found that's not always the case. It might be a separate place altogether. Right, so there's a separate booking process, there's separate exam voucher costs available, and that would all take place through your Certiport authorized testing center or through the solutions provider. Right, so do get in touch with your nearest one. And that's all I can offer in this exam cram session. Right? There's lots more that one can look at. And if you would like to get in touch with me, I will share some LinkedIn URLs in the in the chat so you can connect with me on LinkedIn. Thank you, Mark.
Chintan, thank you very much for that session. That was very, very interesting. I am going to finish up the recording in there, just so that's done.